Dear viewer, as the generic dwarf from the Battle for Middle-earth 2 once said, let's get back to the building. The build I'm about to show you is something I wanted to do for a long time. I wanted to make a druid in Morrowind, and I never did. Then I wanted to make a druid in Oblivion, and I never did. And then I wanted to make one in Skyrim, and now, 9 years after the game has been released, I at least tested the idea for a druid. Nice. If you ever played a Destruction Mage, this one is similar with plenty of alteration utility spells. Well, plenty, a few of them. Some restoration and some advanced alchemy. There's plenty of ways druids are depicted in games and fantasy. This one is mostly a wandering master of the elements, water, earth and air, and a priest of nature, so to say, speaking with animals and such. And this is a rather heavily modded build, so let's go through the mod list first. You are going to need Vokrii minimalistic perks of Skyrim, especially for its alteration perks such as Sorcerer's Robes and Alter Self. Then Summermyst enchantments of Skyrim for Amplified Destruction and Fortify Speed enchantments mainly. Then Andromeda unique standing stones of Skyrim. Then Apocalypse magic of Skyrim for its alteration spells and early game conjuration. Spell Twine in particular is essential for the build's main combat techniques. We will talk about it near the end of the video. On top of that, Elemental Destruction magic will introduce the elements of water, earth and air into your magic arsenal, and I wouldn't like to make a druid without these at his disposal. Because some of these mods change the same things, you will also need compatibility patches for Vokrii and elemental magic, as well as for elemental magic and apocalypse. Make a patched patch for this playthrough if you can. Those are the essentials, but for some added uniqueness and power, I also added Thunderchild for the robes you will see me wearing in the video, and some cool thum, and also heavy armory for quarterstaffs, and Liam's Staves of Skyrim for my main early to mid-game tool of summoning Spriggans. Before getting into any details, let's have a short backstory. Wandering the land, taking in its air and its spirit has been your life. When you were younger, you were allowed once into the High Hrothgar on the throat of the world. Your interest in the Way of the Voice and your knowledge of the creatures of Skyrim has not gone unnoticed. You were devoted to healing the wounded, both people and animals, for as long as you remember. You studied some destructive force of the elements, just in pure theory, out of interest and respect. But now it seems the times have changed, and a stark wind blows over Skyrim as you approach the old age, the final stage of your life. The rumors start circulating of dragons. The Falmer, formerly trapped underground, become bolder in their attacks on the surface. The war preys on the lives of the Nords. The land suffers, and now, after a long and peaceful life, you have to take a stance in all this. Soon you will witness the destruction of Helgen, and it will be a point of no return when you decide to channel the wrath of nature against those who prey on the weak and the innocent, and on all things that wish to grow in peace. Alright, let's start off with the race, and my suggestion is Breton. One of the combat forms of the Druid, combat techniques, let's say, is designed to deal with mages and dragons, and Breton's natural magic resistance will combine well with the bonuses from alchemy and alteration perks in that regard. The attributes spread looks like this. After reaching 150 points in stamina, you can drop this attribute entirely, as later in the game you will rely on magic much more than on your quarter staff, and even in melee combat power attacks will rarely be needed, as you will rely on the speed and not the sheer power of your strikes. Your main goals in combat will either be spreading your weapon enchantment as fast as possible or strike with lightning speed of Thunderchild improved elemental fury shout. This attributes ratio may look weird for a magic-oriented build, but we will increase the magicka with alchemy and the remarkable Summermyst enchantment linking our magicka and health, so that 1/4 of our health will be added to our magicka and vice versa. For the standing stone, we absolutely unequivocally need the apprentice. It will make our low-level concentration spells, such as Gravel and Rapids, or Flames for that matter, free to cast. And these spells will be amazingly useful well into the late game, because of all the destruction perks, fortified destruction potions, amplified destruction enchantments, and the amazing spell Twine, with which every one of our key novice level damage dealing spells will grant us an additional useful effect like magic resistance or healing. All the other spells will be 15% cheaper to cast, and since we don't use that many expert level spells here, the choice of the attributes is pretty justified at this point, I think. The main skills for our Druid are Destruction, Alteration, Restoration, Alchemy, Enchanting, and Two-Handed. Optionally, 2 ranks of Conjuration Mastery in its respective tree may be of use to you, however the summons I used were either low-level spells or spells cast from staffs, so in the end no perk investment was needed in Conjuration. The build is rather perk-hungry, and in its finished state it requires approximately 55 perk points. This is slightly more than usual, but I hope it can be forgiven since Vokrii has a few more perks than vanilla. Let's start with Destruction. Here are the perks for it. I can't even fit all the darn destruction perks on the screen at once. We will have to split it. There's a lot to say about destruction perks for this build, especially that it becomes an ungodly matrix of terrifying synergies, so as soon as possible we will use the cloak spells, mainly the modded ones, Rock, Rain and Whirlwind cloaks. A simple cloak spell doesn't seem very powerful, but dual casting will increase the range of your cloaks. Fortified destruction potions will increase both their damage and range, even though the description in the power menu won't tell you that, but I will, and I'm right. The amplified destruction enchantment will also increase both range and damage, so yeah, that's rather scary. Hellhot's Disjunction will make cloak spells apply 25% weakness to their element, and that combines with all the damage and range increases. This is very handy because I organized my combat techniques so that I mainly cast earth spells when using Earth Cloak, water spells when using Water Cloak, and so on and so forth. Elemental Barrier will add another 50% to the cloak's damage and make it linger for 15 seconds even if the targets leave the affected area, and Elemental Shield will give you 50% of resistance to the cloak's element when the cloak is in effect. So, your cloaks will advance from something underwhelming to something most terrifying. In the end, it will be quite a common situation that weaker enemies will die from your chosen element before they even have a chance to see you, because cloak spells work through walls, of course. But wait, there's more. We will specialize in all the elements, so we will perk all the damage augmentation and then go for special effects for low health enemies. So the earth spells will make all weakened enemies more vulnerable to physical damage, water spells will make them lose health faster, and wind spells will blow them away more often. Of course, there's nothing stopping you from also using the vanilla elements, as you will also get all the special effects for those, because of how the Vokrii-Elemental Destruction Patch handles compatibility. Finally, outdoors, you will eventually get to use the Shroud of Snowfall Shout, which muffles your steps and grants invisibility. Combine that with your super duper cloak spells and you basically become a walking force of nature, unseen but lethal to everything in a rather impressive radius. This is just silly. I don't know what else to say. In Alteration, take 4 ranks of Alteration Mastery and then go the left middle branch up to Sorcerer's Robes. All 3 ranks of Mage Armor will be necessary since we don't wear any armor, and we want to combine Magic Resistance perk with our natural Magic Resistance and potions. Sorcerer's Robes will increase the effectiveness of all our spells when not wearing any armor, and to be honest, I'm not quite sure, but I think it also affects the range of our cloak spells, because we of course need even more range. If anyone could confirm, it would be extremely nice of you. Use Alter Self perk to increase your magicka and then to gain additional resistance to fire and shock. Again, because of compatibility patch between Vokrii and Elemental Destruction, you will also get the resistance to earth and wind spells from this. In the Restoration tree, you will need 3 to 4 ranks of Restoration Mastery and both ranks of Inner Light. How many ranks of Mastery you will need depends on your exact playstyle. If you don't mind relying more on healing potions, then obviously you don't need as much of this. Most of your key resto spells will be cast at the start of the combat from Okato's recital anyway, so I bet one could even handle the build with just 1 rank of Mastery and then both ranks of Inner Light for the added magicka regeneration. 5 ranks of Enchanting Mastery will mainly be needed for squeezing as much power as possible from the Summermyst enchantments and some top-tier alchemy gear. I had complaints in the past that I use too many crafting skills too often, so please feel free to use Honed Metal mod if you wish to avoid perking too many crafts. In the Alchemy tree, take 5 ranks of Mastery and the Benefactor perks. The main purpose of this skill is to improve your Fortified Destruction potions and a few others that will be vital to your combat techniques and elemental forms of the Druid and all the power that we'll speak more of later. And finally, take 3 ranks of Two-Handed Mastery in its respective skill. You will use Quarterstaffs for their speed and you will focus on dealing damage fast. And then your cloak spells will weaken all your enemies around you, so there's no need to waste points on combat skills. And now for the items. Most of them will be enchanted by you, however you will need to obtain the Staff of Nature from the Liam's Staffs mod, or Liam's Staves. Anyway, from that mod with staffs. You should do it as fast as possible. It will push you through the early game when you will still be searching for all the spellbooks and enchantments needed later. The staff summons a Spriggan Matron and is relatively easy to make at the Arcane Altar near Ivarstead. As our weapons, we will use 3 different quarterstaffs, each corresponding to one of our elemental combat forms. Use a high-quality quarterstaff enchanted with Summermyst's Shifting Earth enchantment. This one has a chance of summoning a rock spike underneath staggered enemies. The spike deals damage and flips the target into the air. Cast the rock cloak before the fight, as the earth spells have a chance indeed to stagger your enemies. You see where this is going, right? You can also cast the Perilous Path Apocalypse spell, which has a very high chance of staggering enemies approaching you from the direction of your casting. Also, as the quarterstaffs are so fast, you will have no problem with staggering them with a power attack and then applying the effect with a normal attack. Either way, you will see many rock spikes. Another quarterstaff enchanted with Absorb Magicka will combine neatly with your Rain Cloak, as the water spells can stop Magicka regeneration for 4 seconds, and with our perks they will also have a chance to prevent spellcasting altogether. You can add the Circle of the Moons spell to absorb Magicka from everyone around you. This can make mages useless and even prevent dragons from breathing, as they use Magicka for their shouts. And then keep one quarterstaff unenchanted to apply Elemental Fury whenever using your speed-based form of the Wind Combat technique. Yes, that's coming. The details are still coming in the end of the video. Speaking of speed, put Fortify Speed on your boots. It will make the same combat technique much more viable. Then use 3 slots to amplify your destruction damage, 1 slot for Fortify Magicka, and a ring of Link Health and Magicka. The robe I am wearing in the video is one of the Amplified Destruction items, and in its unenchanted form it can be found in High Hrothgar when you have the Thunderchild mod installed. Now, before we go through the most exciting part of combat techniques and magic and elemental forms, yada yada, let's briefly walk through the key alchemy recipes. So obviously you will want to have a stock full of Fortified Destruction potions, which you can make from Nightshade and Glowing Mushrooms, for example. A rather powerful and useful dual effect potion of Fortify Magicka and Magicka Regeneration can be made from Jasper grapes, garlic, and a red molten flower. I love it because the ingredients for this are so easy to find and so cheap to buy, and they're just everywhere, and this potion is actually great for all mages. But I love this one even more. An incredibly powerful and valuable potion designed to make you a full-blown warrior even though you are a mage. It regenerates your stamina faster, it increases your two-handed skill, and it makes you more resistant to fire, as if you needed any more resistance. And the best part, it's made from incredibly common ingredients: Fly Amanita, Dragon's Tongue, and Mora Tapinella. If you roleplay your druid as you darn well should, and you walk the land and visit caves and look into all the nooks and crannies of Skyrim, you will have no problem at all with harvesting all those ingredients. Until I made this build, I had no idea you can even make a concoction so strong with so little effort. It's insane. 9 years of Skyrim and still learning. Just stop it, game. That's enough, game. And the spells. Your most vital spells will include Okato's Recital and Spell Twine from the Alteration School. Then the basic novice level concentration spells of earth, water and air elements. This will be the crux of our 3 elemental forms, of which I will tell you in a minute. We will use Spell Twine to add some effects to those novice spells, especially that we can cast them for free thanks to our Standing Stone. So, the Gravel spell, which is the earth equivalent of Flames, you should add the heal effect to it, which heals you by 50% of your alteration level each time the Twined spell is cast. So did I mention that the spell is free to cast? Because that's kind of important. Rapids, our anti-mage water spell, also free to cast of course, will need the crystal spell Twine effect, which gives us 15% magic resistance each time the spell is cast. Then the Gust spell should be imbued with the haste effect, which will increase your speed by 15%. This combines with our boots. Then we will need Perilous Path, Talons of Nirn, Long Stride, 3 Rings, and Sealed Resolve, all from the Apocalypse mod. 3 Rings will increase your HP, and Sealed Resolve will grant you damage resistance if you lose a lot of HP within 15 seconds. 3 Rings, Sealed Resolved, and Ebony Flesh should be stored in Okato's Recital to fire up each time a combat encounter starts. In the early game, you will use the Conjure Cat Totem spell, which is a very effective and cheap summon, and slightly later you can use Conjure Hearn, which is a powerful archer summon with his own little wolf summons. Wolf, not wool, they are not sheep, they are wolves. We will not bother to take the perk for expert conjuration, so if you can find or buy a Staff of Hearn in the world, do it. The shouts useful to the build include, but aren't limited to, Earthquake, Lightning Shield, Shroud of Snowfall, Cyclone, Elemental Fury, and Animal Allegiance. Now for our combat techniques, or rather the elemental forms of the Druid. Every single elemental form is designed with synergy in mind and focuses on using your novice spells imbued with spell twine effects to enhance the strategic goal the form fulfills. First, we have the form of the Earth, which needs the Rock Cloak spell and the Gravel spell. The latter will be mostly dual casted. Both of these spells will have a chance of staggering the affected enemies. So at some point in combat you may switch from Gravel in both hands to Gravel in one and Talons of Nirn in the other. Talons of Nirn will spawn a damaging people hurling rock spike underneath the staggered targets in a rather large radius. If for any reason you run out of magicka or just are in the mood for some melee combat, you can use your quarterstaff of shifting earth we mentioned earlier just to spawn some more rock spikes and throw around even more people. All of it happening at once may not be too good for your frame rate, but it sure is for your adolescent power fantasy. The form of the Earth is designed mainly to deal with crowds of weaker enemies. The near constant heal you can squeeze out of it will make you laugh at their pathetic damage, and the crowd control of Talons of Nirn will let you deal with them however you feel like dealing with them. You may also use the Earthquake Shout in this form to incapacitate large groups by throwing them to the ground or turning them to stone, or whatever you prefer. That's just your choice. The form of the Wind is designed to deal with a single strong enemy or a small group of strong enemies, and also to escape and regroup easily in case of overwhelming odds. For starters, you can just use the Whirlwind Cloak and dual-wielded Gust spell, which will deal damage, preferably fortified with a potion, give a chance to throw the enemies away from you, and also increase your speed. If you really need to escape, you can replace one Gust with the Long Stride spell, which will increase your speed by another 20%. That makes up to around 15% from your boots, 15 from spell-twined Gust, and 20 from Long Stride. That's 50. That's 50. Nothing will catch up with you. Alternatively, you may just grab your unenchanted quarterstaff and use Elemental Fury Shout with the Thunderchild's Favor of Kain mechanics. the shout will keep getting better and better, and in the end you won't even be able to see your own attacks. Incidentally, it will also make a forward power attack an amazing dodge and escape maneuver. Finally, perhaps the most fun to use is the form of the ocean, composed of water and shock spells and shouts, designed to deal with warlocks and rogue mages and dragons. So the basic technique will be to cast the Rain Cloak first and then use the novice free to cast Rapids spell in one hand and Chain Lightning in the other. Rapids and Rain Cloak will deal damage, prevent magica regeneration, and eventually have a chance to disable spellcasting of affected targets for 2 seconds. With the Crackling Sphere perk, your lightning will also have a chance to levitate its targets into the air, making them completely helpless for 2 seconds, while you hold the free-to-cast rapid spell and suffocate them with it. This is such a shameless munchkinism, I feel like ending this video right now, out of sheer embarrassment. However, before I do, I need to note that the form of the ocean will be your most magica-consuming combat technique, and therefore you may need to switch to your magica-absorbing quarterstaff at times. You can combine the Lightning Shield shout with the Rain Cloak, actually with any cloak spell, to a great effect. Each word of the shout has a different effect. 1 word will deal minor shock damage to enemies around you, 2 words will release an area shock blast each time you are hit, and 3 will make you invulnerable for a short period. The shout works best in the form of the ocean because shock damage, of course, also drains magicka. You should also use the Pillar of the Lightning Shield, which is located in Dawn Star near the inn, to improve this shout even further. With the pillar activated, the full shout will restore 20 points of your magicka and 10 points of stamina each time you are hit. With a build like this one, there is more to say and discover, of course, and there always will be, but this video is already rather long. It would be interesting to see an elemental form for the vanilla elements, for example, like fire and frost. But for this video, this will have to suffice. The build is certainly something for a patient player. There is a lot of places to visit and spells to buy and discover before you can reach your full potential. And that's it for today. Hope you will find the build fun to play. Let me know in the comments if you do or even if you don't. And we will see each other again. Bye. Bye.